Why Trevor had to destroy the Triads in GTA 5? Everyone who's played GTA 5 knows the surface version of this story. Trevor found out the Triads were moving in on his territory. There was a deal. It fell apart. Trevor reacted the way Trevor reacts to everything, by burning it down. People died. Trevor won. That's the version you remember if you were paying attention to the missions. But here's what was actually happening underneath all of it. Trevor Phillips went to war with the Triads not because of the deal, and not because of the drugs, and not because of pride or territory, or any of the dozen obvious reasons a man like Trevor starts a war. He went to war because the Triads represented a model of criminal organization that his entire existence was built to contradict. A model where discipline beats chaos, where patience outlasts aggression, where the most controllable partner wins, not the most dangerous one. Trevor is not controllable. He never has been. And when an organization arrived in his world that made controllability the primary requirement for survival, he didn't adapt. He couldn't. He destroyed the threat before it could finish, making him obsolete. The first thing you need to understand about Wei Cheng is what he was actually doing in San Andreas. He was not scouting a foreign city from scratch. The Triads were already embedded in Los Santos, operating through the port of Los Santos, running a two-way trade in drugs and guns between China and the US. By 2013, that operation was established enough that Wei Cheng was ready to expand it. The next move was Blaine County, specifically a reliable meth supply chain running out of the countryside, feeding into infrastructure the Triads already controlled closer to the city. That's why Tao Cheng and his translator show up at Trevor Phillips Industries. This isn't an exploratory meeting, but a procurement decision. Wei Cheng needs a manufacturer in Blaine County, and Trevor is the most capable option in the region. The meeting is a vetting process, and what it's vetting for, above everything else, is stability. This is the detail that unlocks the whole conflict. Wei Cheng doesn't need the best cook in Blaine County. He needs the most predictable one. A supplier whose operation won't draw heat, won't collapse mid-contract, and won't create chaos that bleeds back onto the Triad's broader infrastructure. He needs someone he can build a long-term business relationship with, someone whose behavior he can model and plan around. And then the Aztecas attack Trevor's meth lab during the meeting, in front of Tao, in the middle of a firefight that Trevor handles by shoving his potential business partners into a freezer and going outside to kill everyone. It works. Trevor neutralizes the threat, but the damage is done. What Wei Cheng saw through his son's report was exactly the thing he needed not to see. Trevor's world is unstable. Violent things happen around him constantly, without warning and without apology. That's not a partner. That's a liability. So Wei Cheng does what a rational, structured operator does. He cuts Trevor and contracts with the O'Neill brothers instead. Quieter, more controllable, easier to manage. From Wei Cheng's perspective, this is a clean business decision. From Trevor's perspective, it's a declaration of war. To understand why Trevor reacts the way he does, you need to understand what Trevor actually is and what he's built himself into. Trevor Phillips is not powerful in the way that most people in his world are powerful. He doesn't have political connections or institutional protection or the kind of resources that insulate people from their own bad decisions. What he has, the only thing he has ever reliably had, is the willingness to take any situation further than the other person is prepared to go. No floor, no point of escalation he considers too extreme. No norm he won't violate if violating it gives him an advantage. In an unstable environment, that's not a flaw, that's an edge. Sandy Shores, Blaine County, these are places where institutions have already failed, where there's no framework to appeal to, no rules that anyone actually enforces, no long-term reputation that needs protecting, because nobody is planning that far ahead. In a world like that, the most dangerous person wins. And Trevor is almost always the most dangerous person in the room. But there's a psychological mechanism underneath all of this that the game never states directly, even though it shows it to you constantly. Trevor knows his model only works in broken environments. His no-floor, all-chaos operating style is specifically optimized for disorder. The moment you introduce structure, real structure, with hierarchy and defined roles and a premium on predictability, his advantages don't just diminish, they invert. The thing that makes him dominant in one environment makes him a threat to be neutralized in another. He becomes the variable that the system needs to eliminate. And here's the thing about Trevor Phillips. He has seen exactly what that looks like. He watched it happen to him in slow motion, years before the Triads ever showed up, with the one person in the world he trusted completely. The prologue of GTA 5 is 9 minutes long. Most people remember it as a heist setup, the North Yankton bank job that goes wrong. But read between the lines of what actually happened, and it becomes the psychological foundation of everything Trevor does in the rest of the game. Michael DeSanta made a calculation before that job. A structural calculation. He looked at where his life was going, the heat building, the window closing, the version of his future that he actually wanted getting further out of reach with every job, and he decided that the version of his life that survived didn't include Trevor. Not because Trevor wasn't capable, because Trevor was incompatible with the next phase. You can't bring chaos into a witness protection arrangement. You can't build a quiet, controlled, institutionally adjacent existence in Rockford Hills and also keep Trevor Phillips in the picture. So Michael made a deal with Dave Norton. He designed an exit that looked like a tragedy and buried Brad in a grave marked for himself. He structured his way out of the life, and in doing so, he removed Trevor the same way Wei Cheng would later remove him, by determining that Trevor didn't fit the model and acting on that determination without confrontation, without negotiation, without warning. Trevor spent years not fully knowing whether he'd been betrayed or buried. That ambiguity didn't protect him. It carved out something that never healed a wound that lives underneath every interaction he has with Michael for the entire game, surfacing as rage and grief and something that looks like loyalty but is really the scar tissue of abandonment. Notice what Trevor never does, even after he discovers the truth. He doesn't walk away, he doesn't process the betrayal and move on. He flies to North Yankton to stand over the grave himself, not to grieve Brad, but to confirm, to make the knowledge real, because the specific thing that broke Trevor wasn't being left behind. It was being evaluated, found structurally incompatible, and removed without ever being given the chance to fight it. Michael made the decision in private, acted on it cleanly, and Trevor never saw it coming. That's the thing that haunts him. Not the loss, the method. And now Wei Cheng is running the same logic, evaluating partners, identifying who fits the model, deciding that Trevor is too unstable, too unpredictable, too likely to collapse the operation, and removing him from the equation cleanly in favor of someone more controllable. Trevor has been here before. He recognizes this. And this time, he sees it coming early enough to do something about it. So when Trevor destroys the O'Neill farm when he kills most of them, burns what's left, and eliminates Wei Cheng's replacement supplier, understand what he's actually doing. This is not a business dispute or Trevor protecting his market share. This is Trevor attacking the logic of the decision that replaced him. Wei Cheng chose the O'Neills because they represented stability, predictability, the absence of chaos. Trevor's response is to make the O'Neills disappear so completely that stability starts to look like a fantasy. He isn't trying to get his contract back. He's trying to demonstrate that this environment will not hold what Wei Cheng is trying to build in it. Every act of extreme escalation that follows the assault on Tao, the mounting body count among Triad enforcers, the willingness to drag the conflict to levels that any rational actor would step back from, carries the same message. Not addressed to Wei Cheng specifically. Addressed to the idea that structured crime can take root in Blaine County, in Los Santos, in a city that is fundamentally allergic to the conditions that structured crime requires. And here's the part that should actually disturb you. Trevor is right. Los Santos in GTA 5 cannot sustain the Triads model, not because of Trevor, but because of what the city is built on. The FIB is compromised. Every major institutional power structure in the game is already rotting from the inside, corrupt, conflicted, being actively dismantled by the same systemic dysfunction that produced Trevor Phillips in the first place. The Weasel News broadcast mentions that Global Poll identified Chinese criminal organizations expanding into the US drug market, treating it as a significant development. But the city they're expanding into is one where the government agencies are cutting deals with criminals, where the police are functionally a revenue stream, where every long-term power structure eventually gets eaten by the chaos it was supposed to contain. Wei Cheng built a rational, disciplined operation and drove it into a city that was structurally hostile to everything he represented. Trevor didn't create that hostility. He just understood it better than anyone else bothered to. Here is the conclusion the game never hands you directly, but earns through everything it shows you. Trevor Phillips is not chaos for chaos's sake. He is a man who read his environment with terrifying accuracy, built himself into the one thing that environment couldn't eliminate, and has spent his entire life defending the conditions that make him viable. The Triads weren't just a rival organization, they were a referendum, a living argument that Los Santos could be different, that it could be organized, that it could run on discipline and patience and long-term structural thinking, that the chaos was a phase rather than a permanent condition. Trevor destroyed that argument, not just the Triads themselves. The argument, the possibility, the version of Los Santos where the most organized actor wins instead of the most dangerous one. So he burned the future down before it could replace him, and the city kept spinning. Unstable, corrupt, full of failed institutions and broken systems and people making desperate, violent decisions because nothing in the environment rewards patience. Exactly the way Trevor needs it. Next video is about the Vagos Rockstar's most invisible gang in GTA 5. They're everywhere in Los Santos, in the missions, on the streets, in the background of half the game, and Rockstar never once stops to explain them. Click to watch that video next.